Monday, the 25th of October 2021. If today's show looks a bit different, that is because it is meant to look a bit different as we talk about something very important in our society, in our country today, ending gender-based violence, hashtag #EndGBV. That's what we talk about this morning because a week ago, the world woke up to the shocking news that Kenyan long-distance run Agnes Kiprop, a two-time World Championships bronze medalist, had been found dead at her home in Elgeyo Marakwet, that is in Iten. She was only 25 years old and she had just come back from setting a new world record in the 10 kilometers road race. And while Kiprop's murder has been extensively covered by both local and international media, it is only but one of the tens of cases of gender-based violence affecting both men and women in Kenya today, many of which are unreported. In fact, according to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, an estimated 137 women around the world are killed by family members every day, and 52 of those killings take place in Africa. So today, the world may be battling the COVID-19 pandemic, but we have to talk about the silent pandemic that is gender-based violence.
Hii shooting incident ilitokezea machipiano.
Coming up, Lamu Senator Anwar Loiteptip surrenders to police over a shooting incident early Sunday morning.
It went out at around 9 and most of the residents were very frightened.
Ugandan police say Saturday's deadly explosion in the capital Kampala was an act of domestic terror.
Msichana yangu alikuwa anapenda wazazi yake. Alikuwa msichana mzuri.
Slain Olympian Agnes Kiprop laid to rest as calls for stronger anti-gender-based and domestic violence policies rise up. And gender-based violence cases on the rise once again. Just what needs to be done to put an end to gender-based violence in Kenya. Right, ending gender-based violence. That is what we want to talk about this morning on Your World, and we want you to be part of that conversation. That's why we ask you what should be done to prevent and end sexual and gender-based violence in Kenya. What should be done to prevent and end sexual and gender-based violence in Kenya? You can send us that feedback on social media at NTV Kenya and at Victor Kiprop _ on Twitter. Use the hashtag #normal so that we can send you, we can see the tweets that you send us. You can also send that very same feedback on all other social media platforms, that is Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And if you're not on social media, you can send that feedback. You can call in on the numbers which will be below your screen and be part of this conversation. But before we give you a big update of what else is happening across the African continent, it might be good to start with the latest breaking news, which is we're receiving reports of an ongoing military coup in Sudan. Once again, we're receiving reports of an ongoing military coup in Sudan. Remember, of course, this is a coup that is being orchestrated against the government that has been in force because ever since President Omar al-Bashir was ousted in 2019, there's been some sort of a team that has been helping the country return to civilian rule, of course, led by Abdallah Hamdok, that is the prime minister. And the latest report we have right now is internet has already been suspended, and you can be sure we will be following up to try and gather more information about what else is ongoing in Sudan. A truly saddening situation. One of yet another report of a military coup in Africa this year. There have been several in Mali. We've seen it in Guinea. And of course, we are trying to get you the latest details of this as reported military coup in Sudan. But before that, here is what else is happening across Kenya and across the African continent at this moment. And Lamu Senator Anwar Loiteptep has surrendered himself to the police in Laikipia after it was alleged that he shot a woman in Nanyuki town early on Sunday. According to the police, the senator is said to have quarreled with the victim before discharging his gun, firing 2 shots. Locals claim that the police officers on patrol arrived at the scene and disarmed Anwar's bodyguard, who was reportedly in the company of the suspect. Kevin Mutai has more.
It was around 2 o'clock Sunday morning when a shooting incident was reported at a bar in Kanu area of Nanyuki town in Laikipia County. Police reports revealed that revelers raised the alarm after a woman identified as Joy McKenna was allegedly shot on her leg by Lamu Senator Anwar Loiteptep. Upon arrival at the scene, the officers collected 2 9mm spent cartridges reportedly discharged from the senator's weapon. Detectives also managed to recover the weapon with 13 rounds of ammunition from one of the security personnel who was reportedly in the company of the senator. The senator this afternoon presented himself to police in Nanyuki and recorded a statement.
Hii shooting incident ilitokezea machipiano kati ya senator na wasichana wawili na mwanaume mmoja ambaye tu alikuwa anapita. Ikatokea machipiano ambaye ilibidi senator kutumia bunduki.
She was immediately rushed to Nanyuki Teaching and Referral Hospital for treatment, where she is recuperating. The senator also went to seek treatment at a Nairobi hospital, claiming that he had been attacked.
Jana pia alisema aliumizwa na kijana mmoja hiyo ambaye alikuwa na wasichana wawili na tunaona yako na bandage kwa mkono, so pia tunataka apatie sisi taarifa yake ndio sasa tuweze kufanya conclusion ya story ya kila mtu.
Just a few days ago, Anwar was also on the spot for allegedly assaulting a man who he said to be his political rival. Police say the incident happened in Manda Jetty, where the victim, Francis Mugo, was reportedly attacked. The matter is also under investigation, as it was recorded under the OB number 26-19-10-2021 at Central Police Station.
Kuja kuniattack, kuniumiza na kuninyang'anya simu kwa wizi wa mabavu. Jamani, tumefika hapo hii nchi.
Investigations continue on both incidents. Kevin Mutai, NTV.
Across the border, Ugandan police say they have termed Saturday's deadly explosion that killed 1 person and injured 3 others at a roadside eatery in the capital of Kampala as an act of domestic terror. Police spokesman Fred Enanga said the attackers arrived at the popular grilled pork joint in northern Kampala at around 8:30 p.m. on Saturday, carrying a plastic shopping bag that they had placed under the table. Shortly after leaving, 30 minutes later, an explosion ripped through the eatery. It is the first such deadly attack in many years in Kampala, a bustling city of 2 million on the shores of Lake Victoria, but it followed an uptick of recent weeks of signs and warnings that a strike could be imminent. Back in Kenya, drought continues to bite across the country, with the situation being more dire in certain regions than in others. The county of Kilifi has been one of the hardest hit, where the prolonged dry season has caused water pans to dry up, leaving homes with no food and water. And as NTV's Leila Mohammed reports, the county is slowly becoming a red zone, with its most vulnerable groups like pregnant women, young children and the elderly facing acute severe malnutrition.
The skies over Ganze in the county of Kilifi have been bare for the last 12 months. Residents here say they last saw rainfall in January 2020. Pastoralists continue to brave the unforgiving terrain, traveling tens of kilometers away from their dwellings, seeking pasture and water for their most prized possessions, their animals. Those who cannot move their herds hold them in their kraals as they go in search of water in cans. With each passing day, the temperatures here rise higher. Every day, more livestock succumb to the drought. Residents tell us that this one collapsed less than an hour before we arrived here.
Siwe ng'ombe wanamalizika kwa barabara. Wanatembea karibu tena kilomita nyingi kutafuta maji. Nyasi hakuna, maji pia nayo hakuna. Watu watakufa, ng'ombe nazo zinamalizika kufa.
The sight of carcasses strewn along the roads is becoming worrying for residents who heavily depend on the animals for their livelihood.
Hasa kama ng'ombe zinamalizika namna hii jameni, tutafanya nini? Ama watoto wetu tutapelekana nini shule? Na hiyo ndio kitu ambayo tunategemea. Sio kama kutegemea mimea kama mnazi. Huku hakuna mchungwa, hakuna mnazi. Mnazi wetu ni mbuzi, mnazi wetu ni ng'ombe, mnazi wetu ni kondoo.
Residents say that the political leadership has forgotten about them.
Na tumestaajabu wakati huu wa kiangazi, hata wabunge wetu hawatutembelei, makansela pia hawatutembelei. Tumepotea na hili wimbi la kiangazi ya wakati huu. Kuna kiangazi inapita lakini sio kama hii ya mwaka huu. Angalia ng'ombe zimekufa kwa maji, watu wanachota hapo ndani.
At the nearest water pan in Bamba, women and children stream to begin the painful, slow and tasking duty of collecting water. In another part, residents dig through the hard soil in efforts to free the water seeping from down below. But as many here seek the scarce commodity, the water pan is littered with dead carcasses, animals that were too weak to make the long journey back home.
Kwa sasa ni kwamba Bamba Ward kuna ukame ambao umekithiri sana. Ukame ambao umekithiri na umeleta madhara kwa binadamu pamoja na wanyama. Nikisema wanyama ni wanyama wa msituni na hata mifugo wale ambao tunafuga katika manyumba. Na binadamu pia wameathirika sana pale pakubwa kwa sababu kwa sasa sehemu hii haijapata mvua karibu mwaka mzima na nusu. Ambao nyasi zimekauka, sehemu zile ambazo pia tunaweza tukapata maji yale ambao huwa tunasema 80%, hizo sehemu zimekauka, hakuna maji.
For the residents, the quality of the water is the least of their worries.
Hii tunakunywa, tena tunapikia sima, tena tunafanyia mambo yote yale. Hii maji ambayo ng'ombe wamekufa hapo ndani.
At home, the young and elderly scramble for porridge to fill their bellies. The community here is grappling with malnutrition among the two sets of vulnerable groups, with those under 5 on the dangerous red line of succumbing due to being severely underfed. At the Bamba Health Facility, mothers gather with their children to get their monthly checkups.
Initially, they were trekking very long distances to access maternity services, but now with the completion of this maternity wing, it will go a long way towards bringing the services closer.
Here their nutrition status is checked, with those suffering acute severe malnutrition being placed on the appropriate care to save their lives.
As we speak currently also we have the drought ongoing currently, so malnutrition cases are quite high. We have children getting stunted also. So to improve this, we have improved the nutrition services, that is the integrated malnutrition cases, acute malnutrition cases follow-up in the community. When we started the project, the MOH was understaffed to follow up these cases, but currently we have capacity build them by training them on IMAM.
With little food rations to go around, another vulnerable group is facing hunger, especially at the hospitals where they visit frequently in search of medical care.
Kuna wale watu ambao wameathirika kwa hali za ule ugonjwa ule ambao tunajua kwamba ni HIV. Na wengi walikuwa wanategemea sana kupata chakula katika mahospitali na hizo chakula zimekatizwa hawapati. Kwa hivyo wengi unaona wamedhoofika ile hali ambayo ni mbaya na wengi pia hawana ajira.
And with the weatherman not giving favorable weather projections due to climate change and human activities that have caused the drier skies here, many can only pray for the government's intervention. Leila Mohammed, NTV.
And to a story that will lead us into the conversation of the day. On Saturday, the nation bid farewell to a global icon, an athletics superstar with yet a promising future whose life was cut short in the most brutal of ways. Olympian Agnes Kiprop was laid to rest at her home in Nandi County in an emotional-laden ceremony punctuated by calls for stronger anti-gender-based and domestic violence policies. Gabriel Kudaka attended Kiprop's final lap for this report.
Friends, family members of the athletics fraternity turning up in droves to bid farewell to a road and track star, role model, and national treasure whose life was brutally cut short at only 25. The family still struggling to hold back the tears.
Msichana yangu alikuwa anapenda wazazi yake. Alikuwa msichana mzuri, mbole, na alikuwa tu anafanya kazi yake mzuri, nasaidia sisi kwa maneno ya shule.
Athletes from as far as Uganda joining the family to mourn a global icon.
Learned that our sister was actually slain. It was really a dark and sad moment for us.
And Agnes started running not very long ago. Alianza kukimbia in 2012. Never missed any international event. After that, she went to Barcelona during the World Junior Championships in 2014. Amanda won the London World Championships.
Leaders here calling for accountability while urging the state to honor Kiprop and aid in recovering her property.
Whoever did what he did to Agnes cannot also go around here and say he will inherit what Agnes, sweaty Agnes. It's not possible. And so as early as possible, we must work as a team, family, law enforcement officers, and whoever the DCI and DPP. Even in law, when the DCI is prosecuting the suspect, the asset recovery unit under DPP can start recovering assets for the family.
That Kiprop's husband is among those in custody for her murder, sending chills on just how deep the problem of gender-based violence cuts.
But we need to expedite the process. Ili justice kwa familia, kwa hero wetu, iweze kutambulika within the shortest time possible.
Perhaps today, friends and family members would have joined the late Agnes Kiprop to mark her 26th birthday. But coincidentally, they have turned up, not for the birthday, but to bid her farewell. Gabriel Kudaka, NTV, Nandi.
A reminder of the breaking news story that we're following up for you at this moment. We're receiving reports of a military coup ongoing in Sudan. That is Sudan, of course, the capital, Khartoum. So many protests ongoing in the streets right now, and we're trying to get you the latest details of that story. But the latest we have is that the Prime Minister, Abdallah Hamdok, has been placed under house arrest, and several civilian officials arrested by the military. This, of course, Sudan has been on the edge, remember, since last month when another military coup against the Prime Minister failed. Remember, this country has also been on the edge since 2019 when the long-term ruler, Omar al-Bashir, was toppled by the military, of course, striking protests across the streets for so many weeks, which led to the formation of a transitional government made up partially by the military and civilians led by the Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok. And of course, in recent weeks, there's been pressure by different factions. One faction wanting the military to dissolve the government and take control of the country, and another one hitting the streets to once again demonstrate against the prospects of return to a military rule in Sudan. And at the moment, we are receiving reports that a pro-democracy group has actually urged citizens in the country to go to the streets and protest against the prospects of returning to a military rule. But we're following that story. We'll be able to get you much more details as that story develops. But for this moment, it's now time for our conversation. We are talking about, remember the placards that we were holding earlier on, ending gender-based violence, ending gender-based violence. That's what we want to talk about this morning. I have a fantastic panel of guests who will help us dissect this conversation and put everything into perspective. Leah Gatuma, she's a counseling psychologist, and she joins us in studio. Good morning, Leah.
Good Good morning to you. How are you?
I'm well. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right. And also joining us in studio is Annette Nurima. She's an escalation specialist at the KNHCR. Good morning, Annette, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
All right. And also joining us virtually this morning is Thabita, who, of course, has also been a victim of gender-based violence and has done a lot to actually help others who have been in that situation. Good morning, Thabita, and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right. Let me start with you, Leah. In the last 1 week alone, the stories that I've read on the internet, on newspapers, are just horrific. I think 2 athletes, even yesterday, there was a man who was surrendering after he stabbed his wife 6 times. And there are many more that we probably don't get to hear. And I can't help but wonder, what's going on?
Yeah, so it's usually many factors that contribute to violence. And it's very hard to put one particular factor and say, this is the one. And it's important to start this conversation by saying that it's important for us to understand that men and women are different and wired differently. And therefore, the way a man would react when they are probably threatened, however the threat came by, will be very different from how a woman would react when they are threatened, whatever that threat looks like. And that reaction could be defensive. And men, therefore, are generally known to be aggressive in nature. And we learn how to regulate our emotions when we are children. This is a thing we need to understand. And many of us don't understand that the home, therefore, is such a great training ground for how do you regulate your emotion. When you are angry, what do you do? How do you behave? And so you'll be so surprised that a lot of these people who are violent when they are adults, it started a long time ago. Probably they were exposed. I said there are many factors. Maybe they were exposed to a lot of violence when they were growing up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely come back to the trigger factors and everything else. But really, Annette, from where you sit, what's going on? Because we are looking at these numbers sort of suggesting that they are rising. There are people who will tell you they're not even rising. It's just that we are reporting them much more. And the figures could even be higher than the ones that we get to hear because given the prolific nature of this athlete.
Yeah, indeed, the numbers are increasing. And the other thing, in as much as I say that they're increasing, these numbers have been with us. And from the statistics worldwide, we are informed that 35% of women actually undergo gender-based violence. So today it's because maybe the high profiles are actually being affected, and so it's in the limelight. So we think that maybe the numbers are increasing. They've been with us.
So is this something that has always been there, swept under the carpet in a way?
Yes, because even in terms of recording these numbers, the government in general has not had a clear reporting mechanism for the same because of the different factors that have been stated by my colleague, whereby we have issues such as cultural factors, where somebody perhaps you go report and you'll be told that this is an issue that should be resolved in the private sphere. So because if someone tells you that there's no way they're going to record these statistics, and because of that, the way culture has shaped us is that you cannot speak about gender-based violence because of the fear of maybe discrimination and all those negative aspects that are attached to the same.
Okay. And before I go back to Tabitha on this, really, the bigger question here, because the reason why we say these numbers are higher than reported is there's always a very gray line of what really qualifies as GBV, what really qualifies as violence.
Okay, for me, my understanding of what qualifies as a gender-based violence is basically what I would call the significant characteristic of GBV, which is the fact that the victim are also denied choice to make a decision. For instance, when I talk of a family, when 2 people are starting a family, it's a mutual agreement, meaning that respect has to be part of it, meaning that all of them have the right to make decisions. But then when it comes to a point where somebody perhaps is trying to advance whatever it is, and they do not give you
an opportunity to also make that choice, to also give, to either refuse or maybe agree to it without maybe a ramification, which could be physical, could be sexual, could be social, could be economic to it. Yeah.
All right. Leah, even from the pictures that we have put there, clearly our understanding for many of us of violence is the violence, the physical violence of it. But having researched on this a lot, you get a different whole perspective of what really GBV means.
Yeah, so violence can be physical, it can be psychological, it can be emotional, it can be verbal, it can be financial, you know, and a lot of people, and so when we talk about GBV, there could be all these factors together. So that by the time a woman is being abused physically, probably there was already psychological abuse that was going on before. Probably there was economic abuse that was going on before. And I like what she has said, that when you're denied a right to make a decision, then you are being violated. And a lot of times, people get into that marriage, for example, because a lot of these GBV happens within families, isn't it? Yeah, so that a husband is the one who is hitting the wife, or the wife abusing the husband.
And that brings a whole new perspective, because most of the time when we talk about GBV, we just think it's
the woman being abused, it's the woman who is a victim. The reason why is because women will speak out, and a lot of, in our society, people will listen to women more than they listen to men. And as a young person growing up as a man, you already know that nobody is going to listen to you. So you don't report. Nobody reports something that they know will not be dealt with or handled with care and empathy. And this is what we need. When you go out and report that this has happened to me, you don't need to be shamed. You don't need to be put down. But a lot of times, the reason why people stop now reporting is because they are put down. And even women do get put down. Yeah.
And I'll definitely come back to the issue of stigma and what our cultural norms have done, the harm that they have brought to victims seeking help and justice. But let me just go back to Tabitha. Tabitha, we've just spoken about the different forms, and I understand even for you, the problem was not that it was physical or anything.
Yes, these things, you become conditioned psychologically, and unfortunately what we get to see out in the media is when somebody has been hit or when it's already at the later stages. But the psychological one is actually more dangerous because there's no tangibility, and then nobody is likely to believe you. So you'll be looked at, you are the crazy one. Watu hawaelewi, why doesn't she, understand? But now you find that what happened to me was, the first thing was I was isolated, which later, after I went through therapy, I came to learn it's one of the tactics of GBV. You become isolated from your friends and family. And the tactics they use is very funny, because sometimes you'll find I'm invited home, maybe to go back home for dinner.
Tabitha, if I can interrupt you, allow me to interrupt you and ask you, the perpetrator in this case, for your case, is someone you are in a relationship with?
Yes, I was actually married to this person.
Okay, proceed.
And then they will condition you to believe your choices are not the best, like how you dress, your choice of church, your financial decisions. At some point, I had to stay home as a housewife because, he believed mimi nisifanye kazi, nikae tu nyumbani, with the pretext that he will provide. Then he ends up not providing or not fulfilling the promises, and you're not supposed to question that. But when I realized now I can't go back to my family for like Christmas lunches or dinner or even get-togethers, I don't have friends. So he became the only person I am interacting with. So it was him and the children. And before the children came, it was just me and him and the house help and only his family members.
Okay.
So you become conditioned to that. So you become dependent on this person. So whatever they do to you, hautaelewa from the beginning, because you'll be like, oh, he loves me, oh, and all that.
Okay.
But then later it begins to take a strain on you. And the time I realized I was in deep trouble, and sometimes I usually say, when you see people out there, do not judge anybody, is when I began actually to wet my bed as an adult. Hapo sasa ndio nikajua, hey, hapa kimeumana. I am not okay. And what I did is, because I had done a few internships here and there, I remember I had talked in one of the internships, because I did an internship somewhere I won't mention. In one of the encounters, I had met a psychologist. So what I did when it got to that point, I called him and I told him, hey, you need to see me, and I don't have money, I don't have anything, but you need to see me, because if you don't give me a chance to see you or to talk to you, I'm going crazy. Yeah.
So Tabitha, let me take you back then. I mean, at what point did you decide that it's time to go?
When it began as psychological, I think it is Leah who said it began like that. Then now it turned to physical. And being the person, if you see my complexion, if somebody gets physical with me, you are able to tell because of venye rangi iko. So that now even I will ask the community to even notice when somebody even begins changing dressing, because saa hiyo ndio utaanza kuvaa long sleeve, uanze kuvaa turtlenecks, and the sun is out there and somebody is in a turtleneck. And people are like, when you are ski joto, but you know what you are covering. So when it started now becoming psychological, and then it went to physical. And then I gave the option of, can we seek counseling, both of us, so that we can fix this issue?
Yeah.
And we tried counseling, but the other party was not willing, because from what I came to later realize is he felt he was not in control of the situation, so that was not for him. So we went for counseling. We were given tasks to do individually and as a couple, but he would not do the tasks. Atarudi tu ambie counselor, unanifanyisha kazi ya ujinga. Me, I don't have a problem. She's the one with the problem. She's the one who's crazy, not me. So why are you asking me to write, what I would want to see in her? Or why are you asking me to write what I think I am weak in? So he felt he was not in control. And that is the point I was like, this is not gonna work.
Okay. And maybe finally, Tabitha, I mean, eventually, of course, it got physical. But there are those things that you listed initially, issues of being controlled, being told to stay at home, losing your personal freedom. Did you see this as red flags in the initial stages?
It comes very subtle. Soft too. Leo atasema hivi, then you overlook, Kesho atasema hivi, then you overlook. Then maybe when you ask around, people tell you, apana, now you are the one who's being hard-headed, what is wrong with you, Akisema unafanya, it rains everywhere, even when you come out here, there's no difference. So it comes in a very subtle way. And one thing I would say really helped me was the internet. Because it got to a point, being that I am educated, and I started listening to motivational speakers, and I now started questioning, what am I doing? What is this? What is all this that is happening around me? How come siko kazi na nimesoma, unajua, sielewi, nikaanza. Now that's when I started now having like a wake-up call. Okay. And that, of course, was good for the other party. He felt now, ikafika mahali now he will even switch off the water, main water at home. So I stayed the whole day, sijaoga. Then maybe jioni unakuja unaambiwa hata venye unanuka, who will love you with these kids, where will you go, you know. And the fact that I was raised by foster parents, now that even made it worse.
Yeah.
Because he will ask you, unatoka uende wapi? Where are you going? What are you going back to? You know?
Okay.
So
Thank
now you choose to.
So yeah, you are not done, Tabitha, sorry.
Yeah, no, because of that, you choose to stay. And I remember there's a time I went back home and people were like, sasa tutasema nini? You know,
okay.
What family yetu itapata hiyo aibu that, you know, our daughter went, got married and came back. So, but at that point I was like over and done with it.
Okay. Thank you, Tabitha. And I think, Annette, Tabitha has taken us back, all the way back to the basic definition of what you gave us, because that is even where the red flags, what you'd call red flags, start to show. And for her, the situation was she was being just denied her personal freedom. Yeah, just.
True. And I think for that, what I would say, for instance, I just want to give some examples of gender-based violence. For instance, when it comes to sex, for example, where one would advance the same, but the other one maybe is not interested, but you know you are denied that a right to decide whether you want to engage or not. When it comes to issues such as maybe for instance, hers was also on employment, where somebody says, no, for you, you are fit for staying in the house, yet you are educated, you need to go out there and even advance your career. That is denied. For instance, we talk of the child marriages, where children have no right to decide whether I want to get married or not, but then your parents or any other person who is taking care of you makes that decision for you. So all these aspects where somebody is really denied an opportunity to make that decision is actually, for me, a red flag, the biggest of them all, that any person who is actually a victim should actually look out for.
Okay. And maybe for you, Leah, then clearly there's an issue here. And part of the myths, which I see a lot out there, and we'll actually try and address all of them, is one of them is if you are in that abusive relationship and if you don't want to go, then it means you are totally okay with it.
And that's not true. Because as you've heard the lady sharing, Tabitha,
yeah,
a lot of times people don't even know that they're in a problem. And so to say that they are staying because they like it or they are okay is just a wrong representation of that person. Many times, as she says, it starts very subtly so that the person does not know things are going on in the wrong side, on the wrong side. And I want to say that really, even a child who is in that family, because already children don't have many choices, they are the ones who are subjected to a bigger dose of this violence that's going on. And they are likely to be the same people who are going to perpetrate when they are adults. And so for me, it starts from that home where parents need to recognize that whatever good they think they are doing to their children, and I'm saying good in quotes because we all have good intentions. I have children myself. We all have good intentions. But how I interact with my child will teach that child to have emotional regulation from the time that they are young, so that as they are growing up, they know they can have control of their emotions. As they are growing up, they know they have choices. If a child grows up in a family where they are not given a choice, that everything is done to them, and a lot of times it's by force, then they grow up desiring for one day when I will be in control. You are being controlled all your life by parents and your caregivers. They are constantly, pushing you and being aggressive towards you. Because there's nothing you can do about it, you internalize that as anger. And you cannot wait for the day you'll grow up and be in control. And when that happens, I am telling you, we get that kind of a man.
Okay. And we've seen people, even for her, she's mentioned that it got to a point where it was physical, she has marks all over, but she was still in this relationship. Talk to us about why do people find it hard to leave even when clearly it is time to leave?
It's not easy to leave something that you have built. Yeah, because when you are in a family, that becomes a part of you. It's the one that defines who you are. You can hear even the family is saying, what are we going to say? Because there is an expectation that you have become that family. You are part of that family. So leaving that is a loss in and of itself. And so many people are not willing to go through that kind of a loss. They are not able to differentiate between the loss of their right, which is what is a bigger loss, the loss of their life or the loss of their freedoms. And they don't know that once you lose your freedom, you are likely to lose your life. And so the place at which you need to start living is the loss of your freedom. We need to start teaching early on that it's not okay. What's right? You know, bankers are taught to identify the correct note, isn't it?
Even in person, people.
Yeah, the correct note. So that when the wrong one comes, you will identify it. Why are people not able to identify when violence is happening to them? It's because they were not taught from the very beginning how to identify good. I know, and she's saying she's educated. That did not help her identify that when somebody takes away the right to earn, they are abusing you. She did not know. She was not able to identify that. Yeah.
Okay. And Annette, that brings me to the other point about the myths again, because clearly, as she says, she's educated. And most of the time we think that these are things that affect people in low-income areas and all that, in rural areas. But we have people, even perhaps government ministers, even presidents, who are abusing their wives or their husbands.
Yes, I think for me on that, what I would want to say is, first of all, it's okay not to be okay. We need to accept that as a society. And in terms of myths, again, one of the things we need to understand about GBV, it's an issue of relations of power. That in these two relationships between the perpetrator and the victim wants the superiority aspect of it. And because they cannot get it in all those correct or clear channels for them, the intention is basically to humiliate the other person, the victim now, to make them feel inferior, to subordinate them, so that at the end of the day, they can be able to push for their superiority through that way. So it's there's this aspect where someone forgets that in doing so, someone's rights are being violated. And that's why we say at the end of the day that there's this connection between GBV and the human rights. For instance, we have so many treaties that Kenya is ratified to. And at the same time, we also have our constitution, which under the Bill of Rights then provides for all these rights that at the end of the day, when GBV is allowed, then they are being violated. For instance, we have Article 26, which gives us the right to life, you know? So it means nobody has a right to take away the other person's life. We've seen the athlete who just recently lost their life through GBV, you know? Somebody took it upon themselves to just cut short this, this life, you know, and many others. I wanted to give an example also. We, on the 17th of this month in Gusiland, we saw the lynching of the elderly, particularly the women, who are widowed and vulnerable, and so because of that, the perpetrators took advantage of them and they lynched them on allegations of witchcraft or practicing, or being witches or practicing witchcraft. So all these aspects we see, for instance, the connection again under Article 28 that speaks on human dignity, because again, when GBV is perpetrated, what happens? Someone loses their dignity, you know, yet the Constitution says this should be respected and protected. We see the political rights aspect under Article 38. We see that the Constitution under the Bill of Rights also speaking about equality and freedom, which is also denied when gender-based violence is perpetrated. We see Article 43 on economic and social rights. We see Article 45 on family. So basically, in terms of GBV, so many rights are violated.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that really needs to be looked into.
And I'll be coming back to you on why then, if we have all these policies in place, why then are we not effectively addressing these issues? But I'd like Laird to finally address one last thing about the myths, which is the issue of the contributing factors or predisposing factors for GBV. Because most of the time people will say, alikuwa amelewa tu.
Yeah. Yeah, so there are many reasons why people perpetrate violence. And of course, intoxication is one of those. Because honestly, when you are intoxicated, your judgment is impaired. That's the reality. But by the time somebody is thinking to violate another person, it hasn't started that particular morning.
So the drugs is not, the alcohol is not the cause.
There are other underlying issues. Even that person who is abusing drugs, there are other underlying issues that are going on in the life of that person. And unfortunately, many people are not aware that they do have a problem. You see, she says they went for counseling, and the guy says, I don't have a problem. She's the one who said we come. So you help her. And a lot of people, to be honest, are in denial. They do not know. Either they are in denial or they honestly do not know they do have a problem. And so you can't reason with somebody who does not know they have a problem.
And
you
even
can't
the
sit
victims
there and
don't realize that this is becoming a problem. You just think
So if you are having a discussion with somebody and they make it look like you're the one who always has a problem, I think there's a problem there, right there. Because in all honesty, where there's an argument, usually two parties must be listened to. I'm not saying that there's one person who is more innocent than the other, but because two parties must be listened to, if the other person, one person in this relationship is not willing to accept, okay, I was wrong here, then that's not a person who you can reason with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tabitha, sometimes the reason why you mentioned earlier the challenge of having to leave is because there's always a cost attached to either staying or the cost attached to leaving, and sometimes you have to make that very hard decision.
Yeah, there's that cost. As you know, it has been said, one ni stigma. Utaambia nini watu? Especially because my ex-partner was well off, affluent. So people will even ask you, guy, unaacha magari? Unaacha manyumba, yani unaanza zero. And then now the other cost is the children. Because even as at now, when I decided to leave, that particular month when I left, I came back home. And he came home. And I felt so sad when I watched the burial of the late athlete, Tirop, because that's basically the same thing that happened, the arbitration. So there was an arbitration, nikarudi out of the pressure. And then this is when now, a week after I went back, this person decided, since he's not in control of the situation, he decided to take away the children. And my son by then was a tender age, he was still breastfeeding. And my daughter had just turned, I won't mention, but alikuwa mdogo.
No pressure.
So kind of now he's in control of that. And it's now almost 1 year. I've not seen those children. I don't know where they are. I can't. The issue, we are trying to sort it through the children's court, but now there are challenges. But now that is the level of hold that, that fear, that's the payment I have to make for living. And now I try to imagine where these children are and how they are doing. I've not seen them for the 1 year.
Okay.
So those are some of the prices that women out here are paying for deciding to leave.
Thank you. Thank you, Tabitha, and we truly sympathize with the situation, and we hope, of course, the situation is resolved as quickly as possible. We have to take a quick break at this point, but when we come back, we have a lot to do. We have to sample what some of you have been telling us on social media, as well as we ask ourselves, now that Kenya has all these policies that prohibit, of course, gender-based violence, and they have all these mechanisms to protect victims of gender-based violence, why do we see the numbers actually rising? We get all that when we come back. Don't go too far, because my guests Leah, Annette, and Tabitha stay with me. Just 2 days after the country and the world indeed laid to rest Agnes Kiprop, a renowned athlete, long-distance runner. She had just come back from breaking the world 10 kilometers world record, and of course, sadly, her life has been cut short. She's only been 25 years old, and she had a whole future right ahead of her. And that's why we have to talk about these issues. In studio with me this morning, I beg your pardon, Leah Gatuma. She's a counseling psychologist, as well as Annette Neruma. She's a programs manager at the Kenya Human Rights Commission, KHRC. Good morning, good people. Welcome back. Also joining us virtually this morning is Tabitha, who has been giving us her story, and she's about to share with us what else she did immediately after leaving her relationship, which was, of course, turning out to be abusive. But let me just start here with you, Leah, then. We've come a long way. Annette has listed all these things that are in the Constitution to protect victims, to even prevent, mechanisms to prevent. And why are these numbers still high? Where are the gaps?
Yeah, so it's as she says, it's usually easier to say that you leave because you've got the Constitution to protect you. Go report, because there are mechanisms that will be in place to help you. But a lot of times what's on the ground is very different. And because people have reported and been shamed, people have reported and been further violated, a lot of times then they choose to not go ahead and report. If you listen to some of those stories, people already had tried to report, either to their parents, either to the authorities, either even to their friends. But a lot of times you don't have a support system. So you're not so sure whether if I go out there, who am I going to find? So there are gaps in support systems. And I want to say, and congratulate Tabitha for her bravery to just leave. Because even when you're in the aeroplane, a lot of times you're told, put on your mask first, then help your children. They never want to know whether you have a small child. Where there is danger, they are aware you have a small child because when you came in, you did. But they never tell you put the mask of your child first. Why? Because you've got to be okay first. So Tabitha, I want you to let you know you made a brave decision. It's the right decision. You come first. So that once you are taken care of, you have your mask on, you are breathing well, then you can take care of your children. You can fight for your children. And the systems take so long. Why should it have to take a whole year for a breastfeeding child to be connected back to their mother? Why? What's going on?
And maybe, Annette, then this brings me to the next point, because, I mean, we can sit here all day and tell people who are going through this, you know what, if it gets tough, just leave. These are the red flags. But leave and go where?
Yes, I think the leave and go where, and even in Swahili they say niende wapi. I mean, it's what we hear every day, and even in terms of what has also been documented out there. Because in terms of these relationships, basically all the parties have invested heavily. And in investing heavily, most of the times when people get into relationships, their end goal is always till death do us part. And so you are wondering at this point where death has not done us part, but then I'm being asked to go where? You know, I've brought everything that I had with me, including leaving my family behind, to just come and begin this life here. So somebody knows any other, you know, and at that point, as she says, the only thing you might need is the support system which is failing us. And when we talk about the support system, we are talking about the family, we are talking about the community, we are talking about the government. All this is actually a collective system, from family to community to the society, that needs to support this one particular individual who is at the risk of gender-based violence.
Okay. I want us to start with friends and family before we even come to what the government could do. Tabitha, you mentioned that when you wanted to leave, your family kept saying, sasa unawacha hiyo magari yote, sasa unataka kuenda wapi? Tabitha?
Yes, there will, of course, there will. Because, you know, how the society has conditioned us is, I think we have gotten to a point where we equate wealth and affluence, we equate it to peace and happiness. And we forget to look at the inner being. And that's why even the work I do, I help, and we do a lot of mentorship to understand the value. What is the real value of me as a woman? And what is the value of life? What is my worth? And we use the term, I am priceless. I am too valuable. You cannot put a price on me, be it a vehicle, be it a good home, be it a what. As long as I am not, I am not happy, I am not at peace, I am being violated. And maybe some of the things also we need to look at in terms of what is humanity nowadays. Najua, na hiyo ndio society ina overlook. They do not look at the nitty-gritties. We have glorified so much material. We have forgotten to look at the humane part of being a human being. Because when you look at, and I second what Madam Chancellor has said, I have really tried getting my children back through the court, through the judiciary, through the what. But now, you see, it's 1 year. And I thank God, because even when I left, I now started work. So I am able to at least pay some court fees at some level. But no, I had to start from zero. Nobody wants to take you in. Unakuja na mashida zako. Mtu atakwambia hata mimi niko na mashida zangu. Unaona? So unakuja kukaa kwangu aje. So I had to start from zero. So all 7 years, I had to start from a mattress. But on that mattress, I was able to sleep with peace. But now you find that now my children, my son, who was barely 2, was still breastfeeding. I don't know where he is. Tumejaribu. The court takes forever to administer. And what pained me is when we got lead to where the children are and the culprits were brought to court, walienda na wakawachiliwa. I didn't even know now where to start. Na ndio unasikia mara nyingi mtu anashindwa kutoka, because akikuja asikie story yangu, nimengangana, the culprit has been brought to court, and then the court comes and releases them. So now where am I supposed to start? Again, you start from zero. Now, so if maybe Madam Manette can assist me to get the help I need to see these children, I would really appreciate. Or anybody else who is listening and they are willing to help. Ningependa sana. And I appreciate God, because at least I have a job. But why I even started doing what I was doing is because I thought I am better off. I have a job, at least I can pay rent, I can buy food. What about that one woman who is out there? Ako zero, mimi at least niko na masomo kidogo, yeye labda hana. Unaona? And that's now why we decided to be doing what I am doing to the best of my capacity.
Okay.
But what pains me is I'm helping other people I'm holding people's children and I'm helping it out, but my own kids, I've not seen them. You know, for a whole year, I've not even had any access to them. So if maybe Madam Annette or anybody who is listening can assist for me to be able to see my children, I would really, really appreciate.
Thank you. Thank you, Tabitha. Once again, I'll allow you to respond, Annette, even as we look at the failures of different actors in this, including the police and the judiciary.
Thanks, and I just want to say sorry to Madam Tabitha. Indeed, she's going through immense pain, something that you'd not want for even your worst enemy. And it's something that, in my view, could be curtailed if the justice system in this country is one that would be effective. So when it comes to perhaps the systems, and especially I would want to tie it to this COVID season. Yeah, it's because of the COVID season that we were able to even learn of so many GBV cases. It was highlighted in all the in media that there are increased numbers as resulting or that have been exacerbated by COVID-19. But now the question is, within our systems, are they putting in place measures that can be able to resolve such? For instance, KHRC works with closely, is part of a coalition by the name Police Reforms Working Group. And through this working group, what they do is they actually deepen citizen understanding on police reform issues. And for instance, in June this year, through the Police Reform Working Group and also the coordination with other ministries in government, we were able to have a 3-day workshop to just discuss, for instance, during this COVID season, has the government been able to prioritize perhaps issues to do with GBV, put in place budgets that are in tandem with whatever the rising numbers of GBV cases. And the outcome of that workshop was basically a communique, which highlighted in terms of recommendations, a harmonization of the recording of these cases, because of course we have different security agencies that are dealing with these cases, but because there's no that harmonization in terms of recording these cases, what we see is that most of them perhaps are not recorded or even reported the correct way. And the other thing about gaps, again, that I would want to speak about as a recommendation that came out of that workshop is in terms to access to justice of referral system or pathway for the GBV cases. And this, of course, will be speaking to her point where she says, it's been 1 year, I've reported, I've gone to the children, whatever, but they've not been able to get any help. So what is the issue? She's just one who is educated and maybe perhaps knows the channels to follow. But there are so many women who are struggling in similar way, but they do not understand what are the referral systems that we have in Kenya. And even if they are, you know, they're not those ones that at the end of the day would lead to prosecution of these cases and even resolving of these cases.
And even before I cross over to Leah, you've raised a very valid point, because there was this report by Human Rights Watch about how Kenya handled the COVID-19 pandemic, and they were actually saying that the government failed to protect women and children, but actually put them at more risk because their actions, the issue of curfews and all that, actually facilitated an increase in gender-based violence case in Kenya. Let me just allow Leah to respond to that.
Yeah, now it's true, because it means then people lost their jobs. And that increased a lot of stress within the family. This mama who has been going out to work and works late cannot now be able to go and work late. And now she's back home waiting for Baba to provide. Baba has lost job. So the two of you are in the house looking at each other. And of course, there is no way you're not going to be stressed with one another. If you make demands, if the mama is making demands on the Baba and he has no money, he's likely to feel aggravated and to start fighting. And yet there are issues that are not being addressed. And so it's true for sure. Yeah.
So now, maybe from where you sit, Leah, what kind of support do victims of gender-based violence perhaps require from the society, family, friends, the police, the judiciary, and other
I
actors?
commend you, the media, for taking this opportunity to raise awareness, because raising awareness is is a way to educate the society and help them see that this is a problem, and you're allowing us to give ideas of what people could do. So this is a great step, raising awareness. This could be one place, but then even me at my community level, I could also begin to do things like what Tabitha is doing to raise awareness and to begin to look for ways to help people who are suffering. So that's the first level, education. The second level is we need to now begin to, because we've raised the awareness, begin to act. So the community knows they need to do something. So next time somebody comes to you and tells you, I'm suffering this 1, 2, 3, please take up and start doing something to help this person. Instead of shaming them and telling them that you're not, how do you live, where will you start, how will you start, do something. Offer that 100 shillings, take this, let's do dinner, let me see what I can do to get a friend to help you. Let's rally support for somebody who is suffering GBV, whether it is a man or a woman, because men do share with their fellow men, whether it is at the bar or wherever. Take action, do something about it. Somebody was telling me the other day that there's a friend of theirs who is suffering so much depression and they are into drinking. And a lot of times they are driving recklessly because they want to die. When you know you have such a kind of a friend, look for help for them. That's the second level of help. So whether it is at the community level or family level, let's stop shaming and start looking at this as actually a mental health issue, because really, by the time somebody is violating somebody else's right, it's a mental health issue, because it's not okay for you to do that. And when you've termed it to be okay, it's not right. And you see, the community and the culture is the one that actually is a driver, is the fire. It sets fire these particular actions, because they're the ones who will say women should stay within their family, they should vumilia. It's the culture that teaches you that. Can we change that narrative and start saying, no, it's not okay for somebody to take away your rights? And when that happens, so do something about it.
What about the police? Because I've had cases of men who actually have gone through GBV. They actually want to report it. They go to the police station and they're like,
they are laughed at.
Bibi amekuchapa. Ukifanya
When
nini?
hauna nguvu.
Yeah. Number two, even women who actually go to the police station, but because they came here last week and they reported, and they came here the next day and they reported,
I think there needs to also be such kind of awareness that is taken to the police force. Of course, we know that there's a lot of stress that goes on within the police force because of the nature of their work. And so a lot of them don't have the capacity within them to be empathetic, because when somebody goes through so much trauma, it's like they are impaired. They are not able to be empathetic to other people. So part of the reason why they're not able to sympathize with somebody who comes to empathize with somebody who comes to report is because they themselves are struggling. So maybe they also need support, psychological support. They need the awareness support, so that a lot of education needs to go in there so that they become aware and they respond positively.
I think Annette wants to respond briefly.
Yeah, I think also as a starting point, one of the things that we as a community, as a society, as a family need to understand is GBV is violence linked to gendered identity, which could be either a man, a woman, or even a transgender. So it's not a woman's thing, as we want to put it, but then it's also important that we note that the high numbers of people who are affected by GBV are women. But then let's not forget that it also affects men and the other genders. But having said that, I think in terms of justice and also seeking maybe medical attention, as a society or as a country, we are failing. Last year, I watched a story of a lady who was sexually harassed. And she was actually raped. And when she went to one of the health facilities, what happened is that she was, it took between 4 to 6 hours for her to get help. And before she could get help, the person who talked to her prior to allowing her seek medical attention asked questions that at the end of the day were even discriminatory, because somebody asks you, do you think you are the reason as to why perhaps you were sexually violated? You know, really this person needs help. And if all of us are here and perhaps we might be victims today, you see, you will fear to even go to health facilities because there's a way you would want to be handled. There's the aspect of self-worth, the values and all that. Is that something that we are getting even in our health facilities? When you go to the police stations, for instance, are we getting that help? You know, it's not there. So for me, if you ask me, I think, and media is playing a major role, but I would also say, let it not just stop because maybe Agnes Tirop was perhaps murdered. For me, I look at gender-based violence as a national disaster. This is something that should be ongoing. We should create awareness in this country so that everybody from where they sit, be it a youth, be it a child, is able to be conscientized to understand that GBV is actually a violation of a right.
Okay. Tabitha, of course, I'd like you to tell us about the work that you do now, but even as you do that, what kind of gaps did you see in terms of the response and the support that victims need that before you decided to go into, of course, supporting them and assisting?
The gaps that are there, as I've already mentioned, is the synergy between, you know, the judiciary and the actors that are involved. See, the moment you have the police doing their work and they bring the culprits, then the judiciary releases them. Nikirudi kwa hiyo station, hata kama niko na court order, wako za huyu ni ule mama wa zile kesi za. Even the people who brought, they were so discouraged. Because you see, when you look for people for 8 months, then you present them to court, then they are just released. Even the police themselves, being human, watakuwa discouraged because they have put in a lot of work. All the people acting, they have put in a lot of work. And then the issue is the transition from the physical courts to the digital ones in terms of submission of certificate of agencies and all that. It's a bit slow. And you find like most of the times they're updating the system and it takes forever. So you find even when you file a certificate of urgency, it is not treated with the emergency that is required. Because I believe for a child who is breastfeeding below, 2 years, ametuanishwa na mama na that child, of course, is going through a lot. Because it will also take, and I believe the counselor will agree with me, even at the point where we get these children, it will take a lot of psychological support for them to be debriefed maybe on what they have gone through this 1 year that we have not been together. Other gap is also, of course, the society. People look at you differently. Wanakuangalia be different. You find even the ladies that I deal with, they will tell you how they are treated with contempt in family gatherings, even the church. The church will treat you badly. You will live with neighbors, and when they realize maybe you are a single parent, they want to keep you away from them because of that stigma. Another gap is CSOs, and we appreciate the work the CSOs are doing, but I think we also need to do a bit more in terms of empowerment. Can we strengthen the mental muscle of these girls and even boys in the society, and by extension, young men and young women? Because I've also dealt with boys before, because you also have a program for teenage boys, and they will tell you, when I'm emotional and I feel I want to break down, I'm told I am a man, I cannot break down. So anameza hiyo hasira ama anameza hiyo discomfort yake, anajikaza kimwanaume. But what we know, if you've used a pressure cooker before, if you don't let the air out, it is bound to blow at some point. So what we do right now is, currently we have a group of 13 young mothers who we are mentoring together and helping along together with the children, with their children, to empower them so that they have the capacity to be able to be independent. They are very young, below 24, and we focused on that because the situation we have is marriage in our society is termed as a one less mouth to feed in our family. Na ndio maana inakuanga ngumu kwa hawa wasichana kurudi nyumbani. Because ulitoka ukiwa 1, umerudi mkiwa 2 ama 3. So it becomes a bit of a problem. And of course, we continue doing the sanitary towels distribution to our 400 girls within my area. And our main aim is to eradicate transactional sex, because that is what actually, some of the things that actually push these girls even to early marriages and all those things. So that is what we are currently doing. But the gaps are really big. And I feel most especially as I work with the girls for the boys, because we don't have many CSOs or support groups for our young men.
Okay.
And that's why they are ending up in so much drugs and substance abuse.
Okay. Tabitha, before I take this break, there's an issue of what happens with the rescue centers and police stations. And I think I've seen you partner with them for a while. Do we actually, I mean, so once I have run away, do we have rescue centers where I should go? At this police station that I am running to, are there facilities where victims of GBV can be held instead of, because I mean, the understanding of police stations is they have cells.
Okay, the reason why I partner with the police stations is because you need to differentiate between a GBV case and a criminal case. Huyu mtu labda ametandikwa kwenye alikuwa, then ukuje umrushe kwa cell with someone who I will say is innocent until proven guilty. Those are two different people, two different places of thought. And I think also that's why many people shy away from reporting, because they will be held in the cell, yet they are not part of that particular accusation. So we decided to just try and assist where we can and have facilities like beds to give to, when somebody comes and reports a GBV case, at least they have somewhere to rest. Because the issue usually is, ukiangalia perhaps the distance the person has traveled from home to get to the police station, probably cell unaenda unapata cell imejaa. So huyu mtu utamweka wapi? Sometimes they are told, okay, umereport, come follow up tomorrow. So where are they supposed to go? They have run away from this house to come report, and you're telling them to go back. Then you are like, Rudi, utakam kufuatilia kesho. You are basically sending them back. So that's why we decided if we begin with beds, then later on mattresses and somewhere they can sleep. Some of them, they come with children. In as much as unaweza sema adult anaweza lala kwa cell, what about this child? Mwenye amekuja na yeye atalala wapi? So there is that partnership, but the facilities I would maybe request if each and every police station within Kenya can be equipped and have at least a haven to assist in the transition.
Okay.
Of course, later on, we assist linking with rescue homes, which have their own protocol because there are documents to be signed and protocol to be followed. But in the meantime, if each and every police station would have a space for these victims, both male and female, to have a space for them to transition, it would really assist.
Okay. Thank you, Tabitha. But before we take this break, let's just get to see what some of you have been saying on social media. Remember, we asked you earlier on, what do you think should be done to prevent and end, of course, sexual and gender-based violence in Kenya? Let's get to see what some of you are saying on social media. And we have Viscount K. Award says there is too much corruption and misrule, fueling unemployment, high cost of living, which comes with poverty and depression. Thank you, Viscount. Joseph says the society must be strong and condemn such acts, and they should not hide or keep quiet or shame such people. Above all, talk out issues in an amicable, and we are all humans, not animals. And thank you, Joseph. We still have more. Shadrach Bunei says, just provision of the law against those found guilty of unfaithfulness, especially those in legal marriage. Thank you, Bunei. And lastly, we have Kevin Nash says, the government to fund the local organizations that supports women, amplify their voices, and protect the survivors. A toll-free number should be in place for any emergency. Thank you very much, Kevin Nash. We have to take a quick break, but when we come back, we talk about what needs to change so that we can ensure that victims of gender-based violence are protected and we can actually reduce these cases and, if possible, end gender-based violence in Kenya. Don't go too far. Yeah. Yeah. Iko ready, yeah? Sawa, iko na intro. But sasa ile number 8 haina auto cue. Tunaweza introduce tu na hii alafu ikicheza. Sasa hii email haifanyi, hii wifi haifanyi. Yeah, just send it on WhatsApp. That, oh, we. Conversation before, yeah? Brian Mushiri spoke to Daily Nation Sport. Thank you for staying with Your World on NTV this morning. We are talking about ending gender-based violence in Kenya. And of course, my guests are staying with me for this final lap of this conversation. But before that, the issue of mental health has really cropped up in every aspect of this conversation. And I think it's even very much important in the world of sports. In this morning's, of course, Your Voice, Brian Mushiri, who is my colleague, spoke to the Daily Nation sports correspondent in Eldoret, that is Bernard Rotich, on the importance of having a clear mind in any sport.
I personally met her in 2016, and not 2016, 2017, when we were covering World Cross Country Championships in Uganda, Kampala, Uganda. And that is when Kenya made history, because we had the senior women leading from position 1 to 6, and she was, I think she was in the 5th position, not 5th, but 4th position. And that is how I met her. We interacted, we talked. And you could see that she's a shy but hardworking girl. I came to meet her again in 2017 during the World Championship, where she was participating in the 10,000 meters race. Here she was competing against Ethiopia's Elmaz Ayana, and Tirunesh Baba, of course, who bagged gold and silver. And now Tirop came in bagging bronze medal. So she was a hardworking girl, shy, hardworking girl. She usually talk a little, but you can see that she's really hardworking in training. Basically, talking to her last 3 weeks, last month when she broke the world record, I personally talked to her, and I asked her, "You were going to run and you didn't inform us." She said that she didn't want to say because she had a lot of pressure. She wanted to do well, and of course, she was happy about the record. So basically, she was a hard-working girl and happy, joyous, and you could see that she had a bright future. That she was going places. What happened in the last 2 weeks was it was really sad. We didn't expect such a thing could happen, but now this was something that came out, and we now know there is a problem, there's an elephant in the room that we need to deal with. And this is about gender-based violence. That is why we need to come out strongly and condemn this act and talk to people that it's not a matter that you have to be marooned in that place. Come out and talk about it, because people outside here they are really ready to help you out. Mental health for a sports person is really, we can say it's wanting, because these people have a lot of pressure to perform well. This is where they get their bread from. They go there outside there, they want to compete, they want to win. And when they win a race, or when they run well, there are people who depend on them. We start from the manager. He has his money there, the coach, maybe now the family, those who depend on the athlete, now the entire extended family, the friends. So when an athlete goes out there to compete, everybody watches him and how to perform well. And now that is where she has a lot of pressure. They need that support. They need to be talked. They need to be supported. They need to be told this is not well and this is well. The pressure they have will now reduce. They won't have that a lot of pressure. But if you leave them and let them go and come back, let them win, it won't work for us, because this is the results we are going to see now. People are going to die. Last 2-3 weeks, we had another athlete who committed suicide. It's because of the mental health. He had a lot of pressure, and he had all those things inside his life. He didn't want to bring them out. So it's okay also to tell these athletes and sportsmen and women that it's good to talk. Come out, say your problem, and people are outside here, they will help. Osaka said she won't do this again, and it's okay, because we understand they are human beings. They are human beings. I'll take an example of an elite athlete. I went to do a story, and he was going to perform in London, and London Marathon, and he told me, "No, teacher, I'm not going to talk to you today. I have a lot of pressure." That is what we talk about. We don't have to force them talk to the media and tell you about the story that he doesn't have. So it's okay for them to come out and say, "No, I'm not going to do this." And now when they do that, let's go deeper and know why this person is refusing to do this. Why does this person want to do this and this? So that we get a solution so that we can be able to help these people out. I remember going back to the same athlete, and we talked. Now, I was not going to get a story, but I wanted just to have a cup of tea with him and talk more issues. And he was now free and talking about why he had a lot of pressure. And that is how we need to manage this. We don't have to give them a lot of pressure. And this should also apply to the managers and the management of these athletes. You don't have to apply a lot of pressure to these athletes to go and run and perform well. But remember, these athletes, they need that contact. So that's why you see them maybe be given a lot of pressure to perform so that they can continue being in that certain management. I want to say we need to join hands. Media personalities, maybe even lawyers, and maybe the community, Athletics Kenya, National Olympics Committee of Kenya, and of course the international like World Athletics and IOC. Let's join hands and end the gender-based violence. Of course, if we start with the sport, now the other regions now will come in, and they will be able to help those who are suffering in silence.
Out to Bernard Rotich, is our correspondent in Eldoret covering matters sports, and you can be sure he's very close to Agnes Tirop and other athletes in the region, as well as Brian Mushiri, my colleague here in Nairobi, who of course had that chat with Bernard. And let's pick it up from where we left Le, and clearly there is need for change in so many aspects in which we address these issues. But before that, let me read some commitments by the Kenyan government. The Kenyan government recently committed in June 2021, committed to end gender-based violence by 2026. Let me just get your reactions, first of all, to this commitment. I'll start with you, Annette.
For me, that is a good starting point, because it then gives us the backing as a country and even the actors. Because for me, once the government makes that commitment, then what should then be following is the measures that support this commitment, which would then mean maybe adequate resource allocations to relevant institutions, maybe issues to do with awareness creation, so that everybody can be able to see the realization of these commitments.
Okay, Leah?
Yeah, so I think for me it's a positive reaction. I mean, my reaction is a positive one, because I'm encouraged that the government is willing to do something. Of course, people are skeptical when they hear that kind of a statement. When they hear that kind of a statement. But in all honesty, we've got to start somewhere. Even making that commitment is a starting place. Maybe we can hold them accountable. Maybe somebody like me who works with people all the time, I could go and hold them accountable and say, you said this, why aren't you following up? You know, like there's something we can hold on to. But my prayer and my hopes are that when they say they will do something, they follow it up and actually do it. But somebody needs to hold them.
The reason I was a bit skeptical is because they've also committed to end FGM by 2022. 2022 is just how many months?
Tomorrow.
So to say,
tomorrow, so to say.
But really, let me just read one more commitment, two more commitments actually. They have also committed to integrate GBV services, that is medical, legal, psychological support services, into essential minimum package of universal health coverage, UHC, by 2022, and establishing a GBV Survivors Fund through co-financing model in partnership with the private sector, civil society, and other stakeholders for economic empowerment of GBV survivors. Briefly.
Yeah, so I'm glad to hear that there are certain commitments,
Yeah.
and maybe they are even being driven by what is happening in the recent past. Between 2020 and 2021, there's been a lot of mental health issues that have shown, I mean, what is going on in terms of violence, suicide cases, and all manner of mental health problems is telling us that there is a problem. So sometimes when there's a problem, we can see the positive side of it.
Yeah.
That because of that, the government can respond and say that, oh, you mean this is a big problem?
Yeah.
I'm going to do something about it. When it was hidden and being done quietly, you know, nothing was being done by the government. So maybe I choose to be optimistic when I think about this. My hopes are that, I mean, if we don't have optimism within us, then we'll never take any action. If somebody does not think that if I get out of this relationship and go and seek help, I will actually get help. If I choose to only think about the stories I've heard of people who went out and they suffered more than they were suffering when they were inside, then I will be stuck inside. But if I choose to be positive, then I'll do something about it. I'll jump out and wait to see what's going to happen to me when I'm out here. So for me, I choose to be positive about this whole thing. Yeah.
Tabitha, I think in this entire panel, the four of us, you're the one who can speak very comprehensively on this topic, having gone through it yourself and also now taking up the mantle to try and help those people who are going through it yourself. From where you sit, given your experiences in the past and even right now, what do you think needs to change more urgently in terms of the way we address issues of GBV in Kenya?
Okay, first let me applaud those commitments.
Yeah.
Because they give us a backing on what to hold the government accountable on. We want this not to be a knee-jerk reaction, but to be a consistent way of life by the government to ensure that GBV cases are handled and they are handled well. Additionally, is to say the government cannot do it alone, as well as the community, PSCs in the government, in our respective areas, because we have Nyumba Kumi, you know, we have, you know, residents associations. We also need to look at that issue as a wholesome issue, wholesomely. See at ikuwe ni government, ikuwe ni CSOs, ama ikuwe ni fulani. This issue is not a government issue. It is not a CSO issue. It is the entire community's issue. Because at the end of the day, yes, we lose our loved ones. Things happen, but we suffer, all of us. Because if you are not affected now, you don't know. Maybe your niece is out there, your nephew is out there, your grandfather or your grandmother is affected. It has tentacles to everyone. So usiseme because kwako hakunyeshi, hautazuia ule mwingine mvua mwenye kwake kunanyesha. It's a wholesome, the whole community should take this up and ensure they end GBV. And most importantly, the stigma. Stigma ndio inakuanga issue kubwa yenye inasumbua watu, because you'll find like, you know, when you go to report, there's that stigma, especially if you are a man, you know, and there's that issue of you're not man enough, you know, you should vumilia, mwanamke niku. Some will even tell you, bibi yako anakuchapa hata we gonga, you know, so you end up making the situation worse. So if we would also as a community begin to work on stigma, and how does this work? These government commitments should now begin what we call aggressive awareness, creation of awareness in all tentacles of the society. Create awareness. People mostly would assume GBV is physical because of the word violence. People don't know there are other facets of GBV that are there. So unasemanga, my husband does not beat me, or my wife does not beat me, or my partner does not beat me. But there is more to GBV than just being slapped or being, you know. So them to come and create aggressive awareness from the community level kwenda juu. Most importantly is for people to understand the people who are already going through the
Yeah.
GBV issues, because they find various ways to cope. So you understand them and you embrace them.
Okay. Thank you, Tabitha. I mean, Annette, do you think some of these things have been normalized? What would ideally qualify as per definition as violence has been normalized? It's just kawaida tu. So you're being insulted, you're being pushed, you're being physically abused, and it's just being normalized. I mean, relationship is marriage is inakuanga hivyo, kuna ups and downs.
Okay, I would say yes or no,
Yeah.
because we've touched on the different factors and how they define GBV, for instance, for the cultural factors. They look at a family, for instance, as that one dominated by the masculinity, and therefore the authority is with the man. So he has a decision to do whatever it is, including GBV on a woman. For the society, violence has been is acceptable, actually. Yeah, so like, yeah, it's in the public, it's normal. There's no problem with that. But why do I also say no? It's because, as we say, like all the other, let's say the family, the community, and even the government have talked, and even in different ways we are raising our children, telling them it's not normal for somebody maybe to hit you, to touch you in a given manner, and all that, you know, even the community. So right now there are those who are growing up, or those who fully understand that it is wrong. It shouldn't be normalized. And it's because of that people like Tabitha, for instance, now understand that, no, it is wrong for this man to be physically assaulting me, or maybe sexually, and all that. And so people are now coming out to speak against the same.
Okay. Leah, what's the importance of psychosocial support for a victim?
Yeah, no, it's definitely very important. And you know, psychosocial support can happen at very many levels. Precisely what we had said earlier, that the community becomes the first psychosocial supporter. Family, and then your friends, and then your neighbors, that we must all be shouting and saying no to GBV, whether it is happening to the man, to the woman, or to the children. Like if you ever observe a couple shouting at one another in public and their child is there, you can speak up and say, this is not right for this child, because you see, you are affecting not just the two of you, but even this child who is having to observe what's going on. So putting a stop and saying no. But then I also want to say at other bigger levels, like what we are saying, the government, and the government has got very many arms that can help or provide psychosocial support. But religious institution as well. And
she spoke about the role of the church.
Yeah, and I belong to a church, and I want to call upon those, and I'm a leader in the church, those who are leaders within the church, to take up this responsibility of offering the right kind of support. When somebody comes and tells you, a man confides in you, because you see, majority of the leaders in the church are actually men. So a man can find the comfort and the courage to go to a fellow man and say, Pastor, this is what's going on with me. What do you say to that person who comes, finds the courage to come and tell you? Let's now equip ourselves as pastors and religious leaders so that we are able to respond appropriately, because we can stop violence by encouraging this person to be safe first, then look for solutions.
Okay.
Before I tell you come for counseling, the two of you, I encourage you to first find your safety. You make the decision as to what safety means for you as the man, as the woman. But I encourage you to first find safety so that you can be able to be logical when we sit and talk. Because you see, if you are still oppressed, even when you come for counseling, it's going to be very difficult to think clearly and come up with solutions. So I would encourage you from that starting point as religious leaders, let's take the right kind of route. Let's equip ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we start to wrap up, Annette, I want you to comment on the issue of election-related GBV.
Thanks. And I'll start by looking at the Constitution and Article 38 that speaks on political rights. And under that, what it says is that every citizen has the right to free, fair, and regular elections through universal suffrage. It goes further to state that every adult citizen has the right has the right actually to also register as a voter, to also vote by secret ballot in any election and even referendum, and also to vie for any public office or even within their parties that they are a member to vie for any office within the same. However, this is not the same in terms of in reality actually. Yeah. Kenya Human Rights Commission in partnership with the FIDH has been conducting a research study in the counties of Migori, Kisumu, and Vihiga counties, and approximately 79 victims of sexual gender-based violence were interviewed. And one of the things that comes out strongly is that election-related violence is actually a weapon for political violence in this country. And even more shocking is that the impunity, especially in the 2017 elections, where women, those vying for seats and also those supporting different parties were actually violated sexually. But to date, all these victims in our study show that nobody has been brought to book. You know, no proper investigation and even prosecution of these cases has happened. And so now that we are going to the electioneering period, we are only 10 months away to the next general election in August next year. The question is, what is the country doing? There is need for urgent action by the government to be able to ensure that at least sexual gender-based violence is curtailed in the upcoming general election. At the same time, there needs to be justice for these victims because, for instance, these were only 79 people that were talked to or survivors. Yeah. Now that we are nearing the electioneering period and justice has not been served, what comes to their mind? Yeah. They live in fear because they do not know what next. Yeah. Okay.
Of course, we have to wrap up this conversation, and I want to take your final lap of remarks. I'll start with you, Tabitha. Just give us your closing remarks for this conversation.
Well, it's just to say that we need to look beyond ourselves to be able to hold that other person's hand. We have become very, I would say, selfish, for lack of a better word, and we tend to look at it as kwangu kuko sawa. So even if I hear my neighbor's husband or wife shouting, they don't even bother. Then later on, when something happens, as you've seen even in the news, is when you will hear, haya, na nilisikia wakipigiana kelele, but sikujua itafika hapa. So before it gets there, hold that person's hand or that family's hand. Hold your friend's hands. I'm sure Madam can say there are some post-traumatic or interpersonal traumas that GBV victims face or have, like PTSD, depression, substance abuse, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, or even sleep disturbance. When you notice such things, even employers out there, when you notice such things in your employee or your workmate or your friend or your family member, do not really judge on that. Try to find out what exactly is the issue that is disturbing this particular person. And above all, let us not stigmatize GBV victims, be they male, be they female. Let us hold their hands.
Okay, thank you very much, Tabitha. And maybe for you, your final word.
I want to say that for you who is suffering, there's help out there for you. And I want to say that many times we think that mental health help is not there, counseling is not there. And sometimes it is true because you have to pay.
Yeah, I was actually about to ask you that because sometimes it's a bit costly as well.
Yeah, but there are free services out there. I want to say, first and foremost, if you do go to a religious facility, like the church, for example, I could name 2 churches that I know provide counseling services. I work for All Saints Cathedral.
For?
All Saints Cathedral.
All Saints Cathedral, yeah.
Yes. And if you go there and seek for counseling services, we do have a counseling ministry. Another church that I know that offers counseling is NPC, Valley Road. We're on the same road.
Yeah.
Walk up there and say you need counseling. You will be offered counseling. Then we have KNH.
Yeah.
KNH does offer counseling for free for teenagers and children. If your child is going through trauma, or if you know a child who is going through trauma or a teenager, please take them to KNH. You will not pay anything. You just need to register yourself. It may look tedious to go register yourself, but please do. Go ask where it is. You'll be shown and you will be helped. So there is a pay services that are out there, like Amani Counseling Center. But then there are also free services out there. Go to your religious institution and seek for help, and from there you'll be able to be assisted. Please don't suffer alone. A lot of times we suffer because we are ignorant, we are not knowledgeable. She's telling us, she's given us her story, how she didn't know that what was going on with her was actually violence, psychological violence, before it got to physical violence. And usually it starts there. So go, if you sense there's something that's not right, and you're not happy, you're stressed, you're depressed, please seek help first so that you clarify for yourself what is this. Then you're able to be free.
Okay.
Yeah.
Annette, your final word.
For me, I would say the starting point is taking responsibility as Kenyans. Everybody out there needs to understand what GBV is. For instance, we need to look out for ourselves, knowing your self-worth, knowing your rights, because in knowing them, you'll be able to tell easily that perhaps whatever is being done to you is qualifies a GBV. And therefore, you can always be able to make the correct decision to either walk away or even seek help.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, for me, is to call out the general public and also relevant institutions, including the media, civil society organizations, the independent and or even oversight authorities, to just be able to support in this discussion. Let's normalize this discussion around GBV and also take responsibility within our mandates to be able to at least fight GBV in this country.
Okay. Thank you very much. And before we go, of course, we remember we'd asked you as well to be part of this conversation on social media. Let's get to see what some of you have been saying on social media. We have Vicky Smith-Leosi. Vicky Smith-Leosi says, faithfulness should be punishable in the court of law. And it says, anyone seducing married couple should face the law. And we have Wambugu Neema Gracie who says, our men need to be taught how to accept no. And our women need to be taught how to walk away from relationships that are not working. Thank you, Wambugu. We have Aquila M. Nifa who says, the solution is not to ignore the first sign, like receiving a hot slap from a man at it's okay for an African man to beat women, or call your girlfriend smashing your phone on a wall and calling her crazy. That's not craziness. She's violent and abusive. Walk away. That is Aquila M. Nifa. Thank you, Aquila. And we have Masili_1 says, please initiate boy-child programs to have Farm Family Foundation. This will manage violence in due time. Thank you, Masili1. And finally, we have Mr. Bin who says, he who fears rejection has already granted women too much power over him. He who retains the walk-away power saves himself from the misery and being dragged into a toxic and one-sided relationships. Before we go, for anyone who wants to get the services that you offer as a counseling psychologist?
So you can reach me on 0789 023 909.
Okay.
I'll direct you to the right places where you can get help.
Okay. For people looking out at the work you're doing?
Yes, we usually have legal clinics on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so we are located on Gitanga Road, opposite Valley Arcade, Kenya Human Rights Commission. You can walk in and seek whatever help it is.
All right, that's where we leave this discussion this morning. Many thanks to my guests who have helped us, of course, dissect the entire conversation. Leah Gatuma, she's a counseling psychologist, joining me in studio, as well as Annette Nurima, she's a programs officer at the Kenya Human Rights Commission, that is KHRC, as well as Tabitha, who has helped us with this conversation this morning by sharing her very personal, moving story, as well as, of course, what she is doing for others. And we pray and hope that she gets the help that she needs as well to be able to reconnect with her children. That's where we leave it this morning. Just a small reminder that we're still following up that discussion, that story for you, the issue of the military coup that we believe is ongoing in Sudan. At this moment, of course, the military are trying to overthrow the civilian, the transitional government led by Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok. The latest information that we have is the Prime Minister is under house arrest, and several civilian officials, including ministers, have been arrested by the military. We will be, of course, following this story for you, and you'll be able to receive much more information and more comprehensive coverage in our 1 p.m., 7 p.m., and 9 p.m. bulletins. Otherwise, from me and on behalf of the entire team led by Diana, my director, agenda producer, it's goodbye for now. God bless.